Chapter 1869. Lu Yi did not dare to place his life in the hands of others, but the reaction of the other Sunshine Guardians of the Wanxiang Sea was beyond his expectations. The sudden disappearance of the pressure from Yuan Du's aura was the best evidence. The Sunshine Guardians who appeared later were obviously competing with Yuan Du. That was why the pressures suddenly disappeared. Blinking his eyes, Lu Yi gave up the idea of activating the red talisman. Of course, he was still on standby, just in case. At this moment, the situation on the island of versatility was changing rapidly. The Sunshine Guardians were competing with each other. Even if they did not fight, the confrontation between their auras was shocking enough. Countless cultivators looked up in fear. No one knew what was going on. Some people even inexplicably recalled that a few years ago, an expert had killed a Sunshine Guardian on the island of versatility. They could not help but wonder if the past was repeating itself. But since that incident, the number of Sunshine Guardians in the Wanxiang Sea was reduced from 3 to 5. Who would dare to be presumptuous here? But soon, the confrontation between the Sunshine Guardians' auras was restrained. The terrifying aura that swept across the area also disappeared without a trace. Suddenly, a few figures appeared in front of Lu Yi. The first one to appear was Yuan Du. Lu Yi had met him before and naturally recognized him at first glance. However, Yuan Du had lost all his face at that time. This was also the reason why no spiritual island would want to visit him after that. As a Sunshine Guardian, how could Yuan Du not bear a grudge against Yu Yao after suffering such a great loss? But due to the rules, he could not do it himself. Otherwise, he would have killed Lu Yi on the Three-World Island. Now that they met again, the old hatred had not disappeared, but a new one. Yuan Du's eyes were about to burst into flames. Old ancestor! Yuan Cheng's face was extremely pale. He kowtowed to Yuan Du, trembling. Although Hu Shui's death had nothing to do with him, Hu Shui had come out with him. Now that Lionheart had come to rescue her, Hu Shui was dead. When the city gate is on fire, the fish in the moat will suffer. How could Yuan Cheng not be afraid? He had seen with his own eyes how much his old ancestor doted on Hu Shui. Trash! Yuan Du stared at Lu Yi, gritting his teeth and scolding Yuan Cheng. Yuan Cheng knelt down, not daring to raise his head. At this moment, Lu Yi was looking to the other side, because 3 more figures had suddenly appeared. 2 were in front, and 1 was slightly behind. If he was not mistaken, the one who fought against Yuan Du just now should be one of them. The key point was that all 3 of them were women, and Lu Yi knew 2 of them. The one on the left was one of the 5 Sunshine Guardians of the All-Elephants Island, Mu Qing. When Mount Fangzuan from the west arrived at the Wanxiang Sea, the 5 Rizhao Guardians had come out to greet them. Lu Yi had seen them from afar and knew that Mu Qing was from the Kunyu realm in the local galaxy. Beside Mu Qing was a woman who wasn't very tall but was extremely plump. However, her face was shrouded in light, so Lu Yi couldn't see her appearance clearly. However, those who could stand side by side with Mu Qing were undoubtedly cultivators of the Sunshine Sect. Lu Yi didn't understand. Mu Qing was the only female among the 5 guardians of the island of all manifestations. Where did this woman come from? And for some reason, the other party gave him an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as if he had seen him somewhere before. However, when he looked at the woman behind the woman, Lu Yi saw through the woman's identity. That was because he knew the woman standing behind the woman. She was from the Che Ling realm, the one Chu Shen called Aunt Yu. Lu Yi had interacted with Aunt Yu a few times. Basically, Aunt Yu would come out to greet him every time he went to the Che Ling realm. Aunt Yu was here, so the woman's identity was obvious. Jiao Yan. Lu Yi carefully sensed the aura of Mu Qing and Jiao Yan. He immediately understood that the one who fought against Yuan Du was not Mu Qing, but Jiao Yan, the Che Ling realm's realm lord. Lu Yi suddenly understood. No wonder the Rizhao Guardians of the All Manifestations Sea were so selfless. They would rather offend Yuan Du to stand up for the rules. Now, it seemed that he was overthinking. Even if these Rizhao Guardians noticed that Yuan Du had broken the rules, they didn't intend to show up. Instead, it was Jiao Yan who stood up for him. As Lu Ye's thoughts changed, he saw Aunt Yu winking at him, giving him a reassuring look. Lu Yi felt relieved. Yes, the Three Worlds Island also had Rizhao guardians. When Chu Shen brought a group of Che Ling realm cultivators to the island to cultivate, it meant that the Three Worlds Island had Che Ling realm's Jiao Yan. Although the Three Worlds Island had never used Che Ling realm's reputation to do anything, and Chu Shen and the Che Ling realm cultivators only cared about cultivation on the Three Worlds Island and didn't participate in anything else, the relationship between them was one of protection. Because everyone's relationship was too casual, even Lu Yi usually ignored this relationship. But at the critical moment, his backer stood up. Lu Yi suddenly felt a lot straighter. Was it a coincidence that Jiao Yan was on the All Manifestations Island at this time? Obviously not. Chu Shen, this brat, is pretty good at planning ahead. I'll have to thank him later. What's going on? Mu Qing pretended to be confused and asked, since when did people fight outside the All Manifestations Island? What a scandal! Although the All Manifestations Island forbade fighting on the surface, it didn't restrict outside the island. But for so many years, no one had ever fought so close to the All Manifestations Island. Everyone came to the All Manifestations Sea to make a living, so they had to give the All Manifestations Island some face. She knew about the grudge between the Three Worlds Island and Yuandu, and had long heard of Lu Ye's name. At first, she didn't understand why Jiao Yan, who she didn't have much interaction with, suddenly came to visit her 2 days ago. It wasn't until Yuandu's sudden movement that she understood. Jiao Yan's visit was fake, she was waiting for this moment. She suddenly felt a little tired. The Rizhao Guardians of the Galaxy weren't very united, especially after the incident at the All Manifestations Island. Che Ling realm had always had a lot of complaints. If she didn't handle today's matter well, Jiao Yan definitely wouldn't let it go. Among the people present, Lionheart was dispirited, Yuan Cheng was prostrating on the ground, and Lu Yi looked around. It seemed that she was the only one who could answer. Her expression immediately turned serious, and she cupped her fists. Lu Yi of the Three Worlds Island greets the Guardians. Mu Qing nodded. This queen knows who you are. Tell me, what happened here? Lu Yi said, replying to the Guardians, this island was attacking Zixin Island a few days ago, and we had some success. Zixin's first island lord, Lionheart, escaped, and I chased after him. Unexpectedly, I was ambushed by a demoness. She took advantage of my unpreparedness and summoned the battle arena. I fought her fiercely for 800 rounds and killed her. That's right, that demoness is from the Six-Tailed Fox clan. She must have a close relationship with Zixin, so she ambushed me here. Although Yuandu already knew that Hu Shui was doomed, when he heard Lu Yi say that he fought for 800 rounds and killed her, the corners of his eyes twitched with heartache. Lu Yi changed the topic, but I don't know how I angered Guardian Yuandu, causing him to descend from the sky and try to suppress me. As he spoke, Lu Ye's expression became stern and his voice resonated. Lord Guardian, since the cultivators of my three-world island came to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, we have always scrupulously followed the rules and dared not cross the line in the slightest, let alone incur the hatred of others. When we attacked Zixin, it was a self-defense counterattack. Guardian Yuandu used his strength to bully the weak and tried to suppress me. I refuse to accept this, so Lord Guardian, please uphold justice. Back then, when he faced Yuandu alone, he was indignant and forced to speak out. He was more or less guilty because if he really angered Yuandu and caused Yuandu to ignore him, he would not have a good ending. But today, he no longer felt that way. He was in an extremely good mood. The feeling of having a backer was indeed different. Yuandu did not speak and let Lu Yi speak, only staring at him coldly. With his status, Yuandu naturally would not quarrel with Lu Yi. It would only be embarrassing. His silence made Mu Qing very uncomfortable. She actually did not want to get involved in this kind of matter. Lu Yi criticized him in front of her and asked her to uphold justice. How could she do so? Reprimand Yuandu? Not to mention that she was also a guardian, she did not have the qualifications to do so. Even if she did, she would not do so. In terms of personal feelings, she was naturally more biased towards Yuandu, but Juyen was standing next to them. Lu Yi had already asked her to uphold justice, so she could not do nothing. Moreover, there were so many cultivators gathered around to watch. Glancing at Lu Yi, Mu Qing said indifferently, "You were attacked by a sneak attack? And then you killed the attacker?" "Yes, many fellow Taoists saw it with their own eyes." Lu Yi hurriedly nodded. "If Lord Guardian does not believe me, you can ask fellow Taoist Yuan Qing over there. He knows what happened from beginning to end." Yuan Qing, who was kneeling on the ground, trembled. He raised his head and glanced at Lu Yi, his eyes full of innocence and anger. He was already crawling here and did not dare to move, but Lu Yi still pointed out his name. Wasn't this pushing him into a fire pit? Mu Qing turned to look at Yuan Qing and asked, "Yuan Qing, is what he said false?" Yuan Qing's lips squirmed, but he did not dare to answer. If he said yes, he would be lying through his teeth. He would definitely not have a good end because he was not the only one who saw the scene just now. If he said no, he would not be able to get past Yuan Du for a moment. He wished he could just faint here and be done with it. He never expected that just coming out to meet Lionheart would cause such a ruckus. If he had known earlier, he would not have let Hu Shui come with him. She really could not do anything right. "What? Are you mute?" Mu Qing looked angry. Yuan Qing looked at Yuan Du's back with pleading eyes. Yuan Du coldly said, "If you have something to say, say it." It was really difficult to cover up something that happened in public. As if he had been pardoned, Yuan Qing hurriedly replied, "What Lu Yi said is true." Mu Qing nodded. Fights happen on the Thousand Creations Sea from time to time. It is not uncommon for a sneak attack to fail and be killed instead. She looked at Lu Yi. "If there are any fights next time, try to stay away from the Thousand Creations Island. Don't involve the guests." End of chapter. Chapter 1870. "Yes." Lu Yi hurriedly responded, "Please rest assured, Guardian Mu. This will never happen again." Mu Qing nodded. Just as she was thinking that this kid was easy to talk to, Lu Yi spoke again. "I fought with that demoness and killed her, but I don't know why I angered Guardian Yuan Du and caused him to come out and suppress me." Hearing this, Mu Qing couldn't help but frown. She glared at Lu Yi with a hint of warning. However, Lu Yi acted as if he didn't see it and continued, "Guardian Mu, this vast Wanxiang Sea has you guardians who maintain the rules. For countless years, you have been fair and impartial, so we foreign cultivators dare to settle down here and continue to make the Wanxiang Sea prosperous. There are rules in the Wanxiang Sea. When the major forces fight, Guardian Rizhao can't interfere, unless one party requests for arbitration. Guardian Yuan Du's actions just now made me quite puzzled, but I don't know when my Three-World Island offended Guardian Yuan Du as the third island master of the Three-World Island. Yi Rou's personal honor doesn't matter, but behind Yi Rou is the Three-World Island, so I boldly ask for an explanation from Guardian Yuan Du." Mu Qing narrowed her eyes slightly. Only now did she realize that Lu Yi wasn't easy to talk to. This guy was like a dog, taking every opportunity to bite. What grudge did the Three-World Island have with Yuan Du? Why did Yuan Du suddenly suppress you? Don't you know in your heart? By asking these questions at this time, Lu Yi was praising the Rizhao guards even more. Even without Jiao Yan, Mu Qing could not ignore Lu Ye's question in front of so many cultivators, let alone the fact that Jiao Yan was standing at the side. Rizhao was the strongest force in the Wanxiang Sea, but since ancient times, only the native galaxy's Rizhao was in charge here. This was the result of the balance between the native galaxy and the other galaxies. They were in charge here, so they had to maintain fairness and uphold the various rules they set. If they didn't care about these rules, then why would the experts from the other galaxies care? Mu Qing finally understood how Yuan Du felt when he was verbally coerced that day. Mu Qing turned to look at Yuan Du and asked, "Senior brother, what happened just now?" Yuan Du looked at Lu Yi coldly. Since he appeared and said a few words, he had remained silent. It was only now that he opened his mouth. "There are people fighting here, and the movements are quite loud." This king noticed something strange and was afraid of disturbing the guests passing by, so I came to investigate. At the same time, I suppressed the situation immediately to prevent the situation from deteriorating. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. There was nothing wrong with what he said. "I see." Mu Qing nodded slightly and looked at Lu Yi. "You heard it?" Lu Yi thought for a moment and cupped his fists at Yuan Du. "I misunderstood Guardian Yuan Du's good intentions." Please forgive me. Sure. Mu Qing said, since it's a misunderstanding, then it's fine. She looked at Lu Yi. Do what you need to do. Lu Yi cupped his fists. Farewell. He glanced at Aunt Yu again, nodded slightly, and cast a grateful look at her. Then he activated his magic power and flew away. After Lu Yi left, Mu Qing said softly, disperse. Since Ri Zhao had spoken, the surrounding cultivators didn't dare to disobey. They scattered like birds and beasts. Yuan Du snorted coldly and turned to walk into the island of all appearances. Senior brother Yuan. Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind him. Yuan Du stopped and turned to look. He met Jiao Yan's gaze. Jiao Yan looked him in the eye and said coldly, I'm not dead yet. What she meant was that before she died, the Three Worlds Island would always be under her protection. Yuan Du better not do anything in secret. Yuan Du understood, but he frowned and turned to leave without saying anything. Mu Qing looked at Jiao Yan and hesitated for a while before sighing. Senior sister, you're Vientiane Hikari after all. Jiao Yan snorted. I know I'm Vientiane Hikari, but some people don't. Back then, Unparalleled Island was built by Chu Shen. After Unparalleled Island became a top-tier spiritual island, the local star system felt that it was necessary to control this new top-tier spiritual island. At that time, Jiao Yan didn't resist too much. She felt that a top-tier spiritual island wasn't something that Chu Shen could control. Therefore she acquiesced. As long as Chu Shen agreed, everything would be fine. However, Chu Shen didn't agree. The local star system immediately attacked and took Unparalleled Island by force. This made Jiao Yan very unhappy. Although Chu Shen wasn't hurt at all, Jiao Yan's attitude was that she could give it to him, but he couldn't take it by force. She could think from the perspective of the local star system, but some people took her concession as weakness. This happened many years ago. Let bygones be bygones. Now, Three World Island was targeted again. This made Jiao Yan very angry. Indeed, when Three World Island wanted to worship her, she didn't take the initiative to accept them. When Lu Yi entered Lingjia, she didn't even show her face. It was mainly because of Chu Shen. He led a group of cultivators from Lingjia to Three World Island to cultivate and told the outside world that Three World Island wanted to worship Jiao Yan. However, regardless of whether she took the initiative to accept them or not, the fact was that Three World Island was under her protection. Knowing this, Yuan Du still stirred up trouble in the dark. He ordered Zixian to attack Three World Island. He didn't take her seriously at all. Even a person made of mud would be angry, let alone someone like Jiao Yan, who fought her way to the top. Therefore, when she received Chu Shen's message a few days ago, she immediately left Lingjia and rushed to Island of Versatility. On the surface, she was going to visit Mu Qing and reminisce about the past. However, she was actually guarding against Yuan Du. This old man had a precedent. When Three World Island fought against Bai Yu, he showed up. It was hard to say if he wouldn't show up again this time. It turned out that she was right to come. If she didn't come this time, Lu Yi would have been in trouble. Turning her head to look in the direction Lu Yi left, Jiao Yan frowned. This young man, will he cause trouble, or will trouble provoke him? Looking at all the eye-catching events that happened in the Island of Versatility over the years, it seemed that he was involved. In the distance, Lu Yi rushed towards Zixian. In the confrontation with Yuan Du just now, both sides had a tacit understanding that no one would mention the dead Hu Shui. Lu Yi didn't want to mention it, so as to avoid angering Yuan Du with Jiao Yan by his side, he was confident, but there was a limit to everything. Deliberately provoking Ri Zhao was not a wise move. Yuan Du and Mu Qing naturally had their own reasons for not mentioning it. Therefore, this concubine, who was favored by Yuan Du, became a nameless demoness in both sides' mouths. But in any case, Lu Yi killed Hu Shui. If the previous grudge with Yuan Du wasn't too deep, it was completely different now. It was absolutely to the extent that they would fight to the death. It was truly disgusting to have Ri Zhao guarding the Island of Versatility. In the end, the Three World Island was an outsider. Its status and strength were inferior. If Ri Zhao was willing to abide by the rules it set, then it was fine. But if there came a day when the so-called rules could no longer bind Ri Zhao, then the Three World Islands cultivators would no longer have a foothold in the island of versatility. But even if that day came, Lu Yi wasn't afraid. At worst, he could just transfer the Three World Islands cultivators to the Mermaid Clan's territory through the Azure Sea Snail's door. Although he killed Hu Shui, he didn't achieve his goal. As long as Lionheart didn't die, Lu Ye's anger wouldn't be appeased. But since Lionheart had already entered the island of versatility, it wouldn't be easy to kill him. As long as he hid inside and didn't come out, Lu Yi couldn't do anything to him. What should he do to lure Lionheart out? As he flew, he fell into deep thought. By the time Lu Yi rushed back to Zixin Island, the battle had already ended. Originally, Zixin only had Lionheart and the Yuyao left. The defensive formation was also broken. As the 2,000 cultivators of the Three World Island forced their way in, the three Yuyaos led the way and transformed into 3 long dragons. Zixin's defeat was already set in stone. At Lionheart's command, the Purple Jade's Yao cultivators fled in panic. The Three World Islands cultivators split up and chased after them. After the battle, it was time to clean up the battlefield. It had to be said that this was the most enjoyable thing to do. The storage rings and Dharma artifacts obtained from killing the enemy cultivators were only the tip of the iceberg. Zixin Island's treasure vault was the real prize. When Lu Yi rushed back, Luan Xiao was in the middle of taking inventory of the treasury. Not counting the other items, just the spirit jades alone had already piled up to more than 1 billion spirit jades. There were also countless other resources. After all, it was a top-tier spirit island. The loot from the Baiwei Island's treasure vault couldn't be compared to what was in front of them. Lionheart escaped to the Three World Island, Lu Yi said as he stood beside Luan Xiao. Junior Marshal Brother, you've done enough. Don't take it to heart. If Wei Pa knows this in the underworld, he should be able to rest in peace. Luan Xiao nodded. The sadness from Wei Po's death had completely dissipated. Who in this world could forcefully break into a top-tier spirit island just because of one person's death? In the vast Wanxiang Sea, only Lu Yi could do it. From the beginning to the end, only Wei Pa had died on the Three World Island. On the other hand, as many as 7 purple jade cultivators and 3,000 star mansions had died. If Wei Po's spirit was still alive, he would be laughing to the heavens. With so many Yao cultivators dying with him, he definitely wouldn't feel aggrieved about dying. Wasn't it the same when they fought the Baiwei Island? The reason for that battle was simply because Tang Jun had been ambushed. To be honest, Luan Xiao felt very safe with Lu Yi as her companion. This was because if one of them was bullied, he would help you get back at them with interest. Lu Yi was silent for a moment before speaking again. There are more than 1 billion spirit jades here. I'm afraid 1 billion of them will be ours. Even if Z Jade was a top-tier spirit island, they wouldn't have stored 1 billion spirit jades in their treasure vault. It was possible to store a few 100 million spirit jades. The extra billion was probably the ransom that Lu Yi had sent over previously and was embezzled by Hu Guang. That day, Hu Guang took the ransom and didn't want to take it. Now, he had the life to take it, but he didn't have the life to spend it. On the other hand, the Three World Island had taken out 1 billion spirit jades. Who knew how many times they would get back? If Hu Guang knew this would happen, what would he think? The inventory of the treasure vault might take a few days. The spoils of war would also need to be reorganized and redistributed. This was because not everyone on the battlefield had the chance to kill the enemy and loot. For example, those medical cultivators were only responsible for saving the injured. Who would have the time to reap the spoils of war? However, their sacrifice shouldn't be forgotten. Therefore, all the spoils of war needed to be collected and redistributed. No matter what, after this battle, the already wealthy cultivators of the Three World Island had become even richer. End of chapter. Chapter 1871. After such a great battle, there were many things that needed to be taken care of. However, the first thing to do was to return to Three World Island and defend it. Three World Island had mobilized all of its forces to attack Zixin. 5 Yuyao were registered and 2,000 cultivators had arrived at Zixin through the Azure Sea Snail's door. It could be said that the Three World Island was in a completely defenseless state. Although no one would dare to cause trouble on Three World Island due to the might of this battle, there were still some things that needed to be taken precautions. In fact, when they realized that Three World Island had mobilized all of its forces to attack Zixian, there were already many factions that were ready to make trouble and secretly dispatch troops. This was because if Three World Island's attack on Zixian failed and their losses were too great, they could immediately attack and take over Three World Island. Although there were still a few newly promoted Yu Yao guarding Three World Island, they hadn't been registered. Even if someone came to attack, they could only watch helplessly and not effectively resist. Of course, now that the Three World Island had won, and it was an unbelievably crushing victory, the other powers that had been itching to make a move had all given up. Half a day later, a central warship slowly rose from Zixian. 2 large warships accompanied it. The decks of these 3 warships were filled with Birth Tiger Shark warships. This was originally Zixian's huge fleet. A few days ago, it had aggressively attacked Three World Island. Now, it had become spoils of war. 800 of the 2,000 cultivators, most of whom were injured, rode the 3 warships and arrogantly set off from Zixian. This scene caused the spectating cultivators to feel incomparably envious. Disregarding everything else, just that huge central warship was extremely valuable. The value of the entire fleet was difficult to estimate. However, what was strange was that the 3 warships didn't seem to be sailing toward Three World Island. No one knew where they were going. After more than half a day, the destination of the 3 warships was finally made clear. Giant Blade Island. It was actually Giant Blade Island. No one knew why. However, the 3 warships were indeed parked outside of Giant Blade Island. At this moment, on the central warship, a Jade Conch cultivator said, "Senior Marshal Brother Ma, why didn't we return to the main island? Why did we come here instead?" Ma Shangxi scratched his head. "I don't know." The questioning Yu Conch was confused. "You don't know? Then why did you bring us here?" Ma Shangxi continued, "Since Third Island Master has instructed us to do so, we'll just have to take a detour." He really didn't know why Lu Yi wanted him to wander around Giant Blade Island. This order was given by Lu Yi before he left Zixian, so he didn't ask. The Jade Conch cultivator couldn't help but have a pensive look on his face. He was naturally no stranger to Giant Blade Island. Last time, when they were fighting the 100 Yu, Giant Blade Island had intervened. As a result, the cultivators of the 3 realms had stopped in front of Giant Blade Island for a while on their way back. Then, Giant Blade Island had given them some spirit jade and other resources as compensation for breaking 3 realms island's protective array. Only then had the cultivators of the 3 realms left. This time, he actually came to stay outside Giant Blade Island. Was it because of what happened last time? The 3rd Island Master was too vengeful. 3 battleships were stationed outside the island. Even though Three World Island had no intention of attacking, the entire Giant Blade Island was in chaos. Zhao Yunqi's face was extremely pale. As he listened to the reports of his subordinates, he couldn't help but recall what had happened a few days ago. Ma Shangxi didn't know why Lu Yi wanted him to stay here, but Zhao Yunqi knew very well. It was because on that day at Zixian's banquet, he had gloated over their misfortune and shouted that a murderer must pay with his life. At that time, he had been overjoyed and felt that Zixian was so powerful that Three World Island's Shui wasn't a match for her. In a moment of excitement, he had spoken without thinking. How could he have imagined that today's situation would occur? In fact, he was more concerned about Zixian's battle than anyone else. When he heard that Zixian's protective array had been broken, that Yu Yao had been killed one after another, and that Three World Island's cultivators had arrived at Zixian, he had almost fainted. He had hoped that Three World Island's Lu Yi wouldn't remember such a trivial matter, but now it seemed that the other party was truly vengeful and hadn't forgotten. She had just dealt with Zixian, and now the enemy was at the city gates. Fortunately, Three World Island had no intention of attacking Giant Blade Island, so Zhao Yunqi naturally knew what he had to do. "Hurry up and check the treasury. Take out everything you have," he immediately ordered. Yu Yao couldn't help but widen her eyes. "Senior Marshal Brother Zhao, why are you doing this?" Zhao Yunqi scowled miserably. "Pay to avoid disaster." Yu Yao said angrily, Our giant blade island didn't provoke Three-World Island this time. Why are they bullying us like this? Last time, Giant Blade Island had provoked them first. However, it was different this time. Why was Giant Blade Island the one who got hurt every time? Senior Marshal Brother, this is intolerable. Let's fight it out with them. They didn't send many cultivators, and Yu Yao seems to be alone. They're no match for us. That's right. Three-World Island is too arrogant. We definitely can't compromise this time. Please give the order, Senior Marshal Brother. We pledge our lives to follow you. Amidst the clamor, Zhao Yunqi shouted angrily, "What's there to fight about? Do you think it's easy for our galaxy to occupy a high-grade spiritual island in the 10,000 Elephant Sea? That's the legacy of our ancestors. There really aren't that many cultivators from Three-World Island outside. We might be able to win, but what happens after that? Everyone, the Violet Jade has been broken. Of all the people on the Moon Jade continent, only Lionheart managed to escape by hiding in the island of Versatility. More than half of the star constellations are dead. That Lu Yi from the Island of Three Worlds is not human. When Lu Ye's name was mentioned, all of the Yu Yao cultivators' morale plummeted. The title of #1 cultivator under the sun was quite intimidating. That guy had killed Yu Yao like they were little chicks. They really couldn't understand how he could be so powerful. They were all Yu Yao. Zhao Yunqi's expression was full of guilt. Today's situation is my fault. When I went to Purple Jade's banquet that day, I said something wrong in a moment of anger. Three-World Island's arrival was not without reason. Zhu Yueyao stared at Zhao Yunqi in shock. Only now did they understand the whole story. As for what Zhao Yunqi had said that day, there was no need to ask. He had definitely said something that had angered Lu Yi. Let's take inventory of the treasuries, Zhao Yunqi said with a dispirited expression as he waved his hand. No one said anything else. Last time, Giant Blade Island had used up all of their wealth to force Three-World Island to retreat. After that, the solar system had sent them a large amount of resources, which had finally resolved their desperate situation. Unexpectedly, however, they were forced to tighten their belts again after just a few days of peace. The Yu Yao cultivators were exasperated. Just go and attend the banquet. Eating and drinking was one thing, but no one would treat you as a mute if you talked too much. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, Zhao Yunqi led a group of cultivators out of Giant Blade Island and landed on the central battleship with a smile on his face. "Who are you?" Ma Shangxi barked. Zhao Yunqi hurriedly introduced himself. Ma Shangxi frowned. "What is it?" Zhao Yunqi waved his hand, and the cultivators behind him began to move and carry, piling countless resources in front of Ma Shangxi. Very quickly, a small mountain of resources had been piled up. The reason why they didn't use storage rings was because that would be more impactful and show Giant Blade Island's attitude. Ma Shangxi was confused. He couldn't understand what was going on. Zhao Yunqi cupped his hands and said, "Fellow Taoists, you must be tired from the journey. Since you are passing by this island is willing to offer some resources as a host. I hope that fellow Taoists won't mind." Ma Shangxi was dumbfounded. He secretly thought to himself, how could there be such a good thing? Staying outside a spiritual island for a while would give him such benefits. If he could visit the other major spiritual islands, wouldn't he become the richest person in the world? Moreover, wasn't the things Giant Blade Island was giving out a bit too much? Although he didn't count them carefully, he roughly knew the value of these resources with just a glance. There must be a demon behind this abnormality. Ma Shangxi pondered for a moment and said, "Wait a moment." He immediately sent a message to Lu Yi. Soon he received a reply. Ma Shangxi roughly understood the situation. He looked at Zhao Yunqi indifferently and truthfully conveyed Lu Ye's words. "Island Master Zhao, you can do it twice, but not thrice. If there is a next time, the fate of your island will be unknown." Zhao Yunqi let out a long breath, knowing that he had passed this hurdle. He immediately nodded and said, "This Zhao understands. There definitely won't be a next time." Ma Shangxi nodded and raised his hand to order, "Return to the island." After a short while, the 3 warships returned with a full load. Zhao Yunqi led a group of giant Blade Island cultivators behind and shouted, "Farewell, fellow Taoists." After a long time, he raised his head and looked at the 3 warships that were gradually disappearing into the distance. His face was full of annoyance. With one sentence, he had caused giant Blade Island to lose tens of millions of spirit jades. He wished he could slap himself a few times. He turned his head and looked at Yu Yao in a daze. "Junior Marshal Brother, return to the star system again and ask for material support." When Yu Yao heard this, his expression immediately became uncomfortable, as if he had eaten shit. Last time, he had gone back to ask for material support. As a result, he had been reprimanded by Rizhao. Why was it him again this time? Inside Purple Jade Island, Lu Yi put away the sound talisman and ended the communication with Ma Shangxi. He didn't plan to exterminate Giant Blade Island. There was no need to do so. Not to mention that the 3-world island had defeated Purple Jade. Their cultivators were physically and mentally exhausted, and many of them were injured and needed to recuperate. Moreover, what good would conquering Giant Blade Island do? Conquering Purple Jade was enough to make the various forces in the Myriad Sea fear the 3-world island. If they attacked Giant Blade Island without stopping, it would only make people think that the 3-world island was arrogant and despotic. Moreover, that day, Zhao Yunqi had only agreed with a few words of indignation. He hadn't done anything to harm the 3-world island's interests. That was why he had Ma Shangxi lead the fleet outside Giant Blade Island. Zhao Yunqi was a smart person and naturally knew what to do. Now that the other party had lost money to avoid disaster and apologized, the matter was over. Feng Wujiang flew over and shouted to Lu Yi, "Junior Marshal Brother, we found the entrance to the Spirit Jade Mine. Let's go take a look." Lu Yi immediately became spirited and flew towards the entrance of the Spirit Jade Mine with his senior marshal brother. End of chapter. Chapter 1872. After a short while, Lu Yi walked around the Spirit Jade Mine. Purple Jade was a top-grade spirit island, so of course it had its own Spirit Jade Mine. This was also the symbol of a top-grade spirit island. This was not the first time he had entered a Spirit Jade Mine. He had investigated the mine in the core of Fangtsuan Mountain before. He had also seen the Mermaid Tribe's Spirit Jade Mine countless times. Spirit Jade veins were called veins, but they were not the same as real veins. Normal veins had many derivatives and accompanying creatures, and it was quite troublesome to mine them. Those derivatives had to be removed, and the purity of the mined ores varied. Some methods had to be used to purify the ores needed to be used. However, that was not the case for Spirit Jade mines. The formation of Spirit Jade was the condensation of the starry sky energy. When it reached a certain limit, the starry sky energy would condense into Spirit Jade. Therefore, every top-grade Spirit Island Spirit Jade mine was the place with the densest energy. Cultivators could carve out grooves of suitable sizes within the ore vein in advance. Next, they only needed to wait quietly and the many grooves would condense out Spirit Jades. Then they could harvest them at the right time. Naturally, they could also do as they pleased without affecting the ore vein too much. In a special place like the Wanxiang Sea, it could be said that the Wanxiang Sea would never dry up. The Spirit Jade veins of all the top Spirit Islands were inexhaustible. This was because, fundamentally speaking, the Spirit Jades that were harvested were condensed from the dissipated energy of the Wanxiang Sea. The scale of this Spirit Jade mine on Purple Jade Island was quite good. However, compared to the mine in the core of Fangtsuan Mountain, it was still slightly lacking. When Lu Yi arrived, Luan Xiaoa, He Baichuan, and Yen Miao had already arrived. They were looking around excitedly. This was undoubtedly the first time Luan Xiaoa and Yen Miao had entered a Spirit Jade mine. They were very surprised. Yen Miao, on the other hand, had seen this many times. The Spirit Jade mine in the Mermaid Tribe's territory was much larger than this one. Apart from the 3 of them, many other star constellations who had heard the news came to watch the show. Everyone was from a place like the Jade Snail Galaxy. When had they ever seen something as rare as a Spirit Jade mine? Sensing Lu Ye's aura, Luan Xiaoa turned and waved at him. "Junior brother, over here." Lu Yi walked over and looked around. He said, "Grand Elder, how is the production of the spirit jade mine? Yen Miao was undoubtedly the one who knew the most about the spirit jade mine, so they could only ask her about this matter. Yen Miao had already looked at it for a while and already had an estimate. He said, about 30 million a year. 30 million spiritual jades? He Baichuan asked. That's right. Miao Yen nodded. Not much. He Baichuan curled his lips, his interest greatly dampened. He had thought that this kind of spirit jade mine would have a high yield, but it turned out that it only produced 30 million spirit jades a year. 3 World Islands' annual income was much higher than this. In comparison, this spirit jade mine was valuable, but it didn't seem to be very valuable. Luan Xiao couldn't help but glare at He Baichuan. You've only been living a comfortable life for a few days, and you've already forgotten the hardships of the past? Isn't 30 million a lot? It's free money. 30 million spirit jades was not a small amount for any cultivator under the sun. It was enough to buy an 8-star transcendent artifact and still have some left over. And this is just a year's worth of profit. Xian has been here for tens of thousands of years. Think about how many benefits they have taken from here. He Baichuan smiled awkwardly. I'm just saying. Speaking of which, if it weren't for the 3 World Island, 30 million spirit jades would be a huge sum for the cultivators of the 3 World Island. For example, when Lu Yi turned the tide and helped the 4-Way Galaxy defeat the allied forces of the Insect and Blood clans, the 4-Way Galaxy only gave him 20 million spirit jades as a thank you gift. It wasn't that the 4-Way Galaxy was stingy, but that their reserves were limited and they couldn't take out that much. Last time, when 3 World Island extorted Giant Blade Island, the total value of the spirit jades and resources they gave was also about 20 to 30 million spirit jades. Therefore, 30 million spirit jades a year was definitely not a small amount. However, when He Baichuan compared this number to the 3 World Islands' current income, it didn't seem much. On the other hand, Xian had been here for tens of thousands of years. It was hard to imagine how much they had benefited from it. The huge amount of spirit jades had helped them cultivate many cultivators. The most important thing was that he had picked it up for free. To a top-grade spirit island, the spirit jade mineral vein was important but not essential. This was because every force that occupied a top-grade spirit island had a top-grade realm behind them. They themselves had spirit jade mineral veins in their realm, and the scale was definitely bigger than the one in the Wanxiang Sea. To the forces that came from the top-grade realms, the spirit island itself was the place that they valued. This was because the spirit island had a special cultivation environment that no other realm could have. Therefore, the spirit jade mineral vein here wasn't the goal of the top-grade forces. It was just a side benefit. Suddenly, there were sounds of discussion. Many star mansions gathered to watch. Soon, someone shouted, "Senior brothers and sisters, there are spirit crystals here." Lu Yi and the others looked in the direction of the voice and walked over. Indeed, they saw spirit crystals here. Why is the arrangement of these spirit crystals so strange? He Baichuan glanced at it with a puzzled expression. In his opinion, the spirit crystals here were arranged radially from a certain point. The closer they were to the center, the brighter the spirit crystals would be. Conversely, the spirit crystals would be dimmer. Further out, they would gradually become low-grade spirit jades. The source of the vein. Yen Miao said slowly. What? He Baichuan looked at him in confusion. The source of the spirit jade mineral vein is the source of the vein. This is something that cannot be detected by the naked eye or even by spiritual force. It is because of the source of the vein that the energy in the universe gathers towards the source of the vein and condenses into spirit jades. The closer it is to the source of the vein, the easier it is for spirit crystals to form. Yen Miao explained, a spirit jade mineral vein has more than one source of vein. Look around. There should be other sources. The cultivators of the 3 World Island immediately looked around. As expected, they found more sources of vein. There were about 10 source points in the entire spirit jade mineral vein. They ran through the entire mineral vein from the beginning to the end. Lu Yi tried to use his spiritual force to sense them. Indeed, he could not detect anything strange. The source of the vein was invisible and could not be detected. However, The fact that spirit crystals formed near the source of the vein was undoubtedly the best evidence. The cultivators of the three-world island watched the commotion in the spirit jade mineral vein for a while before they started harvesting. The condensation of spirit jades and spirit crystals was like the growth of a fruit. As the energy in the universe continued to gather, the fruit would gradually grow larger and fuller. If this was their own spirit jade mineral vein, they would naturally wait for the fruit to ripen before harvesting it. However, this was a mineral vein that they had obtained from war. The cultivators of the three-world island were not so particular. They did not care if the fruit was ripe or not. They just harvested everything first. Although the spirit jades and spirit crystals that had not fully condensed were small in size, they would not hinder their cultivation. Before they could finish their work, they heard that Tang Jun had arrived. Including him, the other Yu Yaos were all shocked when they heard this. They hurriedly walked out. From afar, they saw Tang Jun looking around. Lu Yi hurried over. Did something happen on the island? Tang Jun shook his head. No. Then why did you come here? Lu Yi said in annoyance. Thinking about it, if something had happened on the island, Tang Jun would definitely send a message over immediately. He would not come here personally. I have something to discuss. Tang Jun's expression turned serious. Something big? Lu Yi blinked. He seemed to have realized something. He said, let's find a place to talk. After a short while, the Yu Yaos of the three-world island took their seats in a large hall on Purple Jade Island. The hall was quite majestic. The overall style was also very rough. It was the style of the Yao tribe. After everyone was seated, Tang Jun said, before we talk, tell me, do you want this Purple Jade Island or not? Lu Yi thought to himself. It was just as he had guessed. Otherwise, Tang Jun would not have asked such a question. Although he already had some insight, he still asked, so what if I want it? So what if I don't? Tang Jun remained calm. You have to say what you want, not what you don't want. If we say we want it, then according to the rules of the myriad phenomenon C, the same force cannot occupy two spirit islands. Therefore, we have to move from the three-world island to Purple Jade. We have to give up on the three-world island. Of course, we can also split up. After all, we are three realms united. If one realm occupies Purple Jade, then the rules will make sense. He Baichuan said, how can we give up on the three-world island? Although the three-world island was a high-class spirit island and Purple Jade was a top-class spirit island, if he had to choose, he would definitely choose the three-world island and not Purple Jade. The only thing better about Purple Jade than the three-world island was that the cultivation environment was much better. However, in the entire myriad phenomenon C, how many spirit islands could compare to the three-world island's ability to accumulate wealth? What the cultivators of the three-world lacked now was not a cultivation environment. Their own islands were definitely sufficient. Anything better would not be of much help. What the cultivators of the three-world needed most was to earn more spirit jades. This was because everyone had their own realm behind them. They had a huge desire for spirit jades and cultivation resources. Tang Jun nodded and said, yes, I also feel that we cannot give up on the three-world island. If we want Purple Jade, then we can only split up. 1 or 2 realms can occupy Purple Jade. No. He Baichuan immediately shook his head. When the cultivators of the three-world island were united, their overall strength was not very strong. After splitting up, there was no need to talk about them. They did not have the qualifications to occupy a top-class spirit island. Now, they were able to occupy the three-world island stably. Firstly, it was because of their reputation from conquering Baiyue. Secondly, it was because of Che Ling Realm's secret support. Lu Ye's role in this was irreplaceable. Without him, whether it was the three-world island or Purple Jade, no one on their side could stand firm. Hence, splitting up was useless. When the time came, whichever side Lu Yi was on would be stable. As for the other side, it would definitely be coveted by countless forces. Luan Xiao said slowly, I thought about this before. If Purple Jade is conquered, I'm afraid we won't be able to occupy it. Hence, I'm afraid we can't take Purple Jade. End of chapter. Chapter 1873. This was undoubtedly a happy problem. There were many factions in the Vientiane Sea, but there were only so many spiritual islands. Many factions did not have a place to settle down and could only wander around. If they were lucky, they could find a deserted island to settle down temporarily. If they were unlucky, they would be homeless. However, when it came to the Three-World Island, the situation was different. Back then, they conquered Baiyue and secretly gave it to Four Corner Island. Now that they had conquered Zixien, they could not even take it. This was, we can't take Zixien. We can confirm this, right? Tang Jun looked at everyone. Everyone nodded. Actually, even if Tang Jun did not mention this, Luan Xiao would have gathered Yu Yao to discuss how to deal with Zixien. Now, it seemed like they had agreed not to take Zixien. If we don't want Zixien, how should we deal with it? He Baichuan asked. It was not easy to conquer such a top-grade spiritual island. They could not just lose it. If they did, someone would definitely come and take it. It was a great benefit. Auction? Yen Miao suggested, just like how we auctioned off Baiyue. We should be able to sell it for a good price. Although this method works, I am afraid no one would dare to take it, Luan Xiao said. After all, Zixien was a spiritual island occupied by a top-grade faction. Although it had been conquered by the Three-World Island, it was not something that anyone could covet. This top-grade spiritual island was different from Baiyue. Back then, countless factions fought over Baiyue and competed with each other during the auction. However, no one dared to take over Zixien. This was because once they did, they would definitely stand against Zixien. If Zixien lost her spiritual island, she would definitely think of a way to get it back. Take Four Corner Island for example. The Baiyue Galaxy had been eyeing Four Corner Island covetously. They wanted to take back control of Four Corner Island. However, Four Corner Island was not weak. The Baiyue Galaxy could not do anything. However, Zixien was different. If they did not have any backing, they would not dare to have any ideas. This might be a hot potato. Wrong. Tang Jun smiled. There are indeed people who are interested in Zixien. What news did you get? Lu Yi looked at him and asked. Tang Jun said, after you conquered Zixien, someone sent a message saying that they want to take over Zixien. They want us to offer a reasonable price. There are not many people, but there are 4 or 5 factions. Lu Yi asked curiously, who is so bold? Tang Jun said, in a place without rules, I'm afraid no one would dare to disregard Zixien's reputation. However, this is the Wanxiang Sea after all. Although Zixien's reputation is great, the rule that only the 5 registered Yu Yao are qualified to participate in the Battle of the Spiritual Islands means that Zixien won't cause too much trouble in the vast Wanxiang Sea. After those forces take over Zixien, as long as they properly fortify their defenses, it won't be that easy for Zixien to deploy troops to take them down. As long as they can hold on for a period of time and wait for the defensive formation to become more stable, they will be able to gain a firm foothold. Therefore, this has nothing to do with courage. Zixien is indeed a top-level domain, but the universe is vast. Some large domains have very strong foundations. Lu Yi understood. It was not that those who had secretly contacted Tang Jun and wanted to stay in Zixien were not unafraid of Zixien. It was just that the rules of the Wanxiang Sea had greatly restricted Zixien. Even if Zixien had great strength, there was a limit to what it could do on the Wanxiang Sea. Therefore it was worth the risk. Moreover, they had a certain level of confidence. If they missed this opportunity, they might not be able to wait for the next opportunity in their lifetime. Naturally, someone would take action. Although 4 or 5 isn't much, we should be able to sell it for a good price. He Baichuan nodded. We can sell it. Luan Xiao pondered for a moment. She was also tempted. Under the premise that the cultivators of the 3 realms could not take over Zixien, selling it was indeed the only choice. Everyone turned to look at Lu Yi. Although Lu Yi was only the 3rd island master in name, he had played a decisive role in the development of the 3 realms island over the years. He was also the one who led and resolved all the difficulties that the island faced. If not for him, Zixien would not have been able to take it down. Therefore, it was up to him to decide what to do in the end. After pondering for a moment, Lu Yi said, we definitely have to sell it. I already have a suitable buyer in mind. Moreover, I believe that they will give us a very high price. Wan Xiao was stunned. Who? She did not see Lu Yi contact anyone. How did he find a suitable buyer? Lu Yi shook his head and said, let's not talk about this first. Old Tang, you didn't rush over here just to discuss the ownership of Zixian, right? Is there something else going on here? If it was just to discuss the ownership of Zixian, it could have been delayed. However, Tang Jun had rushed over directly. There was no doubt that something was wrong. Tang Jun smiled and said, you're so smart. Since you've figured it out, I won't keep you in suspense. It's like this. Not long after you killed Lionheart outside the island of Versatility, a guest came to the Three Realms Island. It was Taoist Yu from the Che Ling realm. She passed by the Three Realms Island and went to see that brat Chu Shen. After she left, Chu Shen came to find me and said something. What? Di Baichuan asked curiously. Tang Jun said, you can think of a way to sell Zixian Island back to the Zixian Demon Star. Di Baichuan was stunned and looked confused. What kind of logic is that? It wasn't easy for us to conquer it. If we sell it back, wouldn't it be a waste of our efforts? Tang Jun nodded and said, yes, when I heard this, I also had the same thought. However, what Chu Shen said to me was obviously Taoist Yu's advice. Taoist Yu is a cultivator from the Che Ling realm, so she can't have any direct contact with us. That's why she asked Chu Shen to pass on the message. After a pause, Tang Jun continued, thinking deeper, could Taoist Yu's meaning be the same as that of the Che Ling realm? If that's the case, then it's very profound. It was impossible to guess Ri Guang's thoughts, but no one dared to ignore it. That's why I've been thinking along the way. What's the meaning behind this? We destroyed Zixian Island and killed so many Zixian Demon Star cultivators. Even if we sell it back to them, it won't resolve this grudge. If that's the case, why should we sell it back to Zixian? Tang Jun showed a distressed expression. He Baichuan asked, have you thought it through? Tang Jun chuckled and did not answer. Instead, he looked at Lu Yi. Who's the suitable person you're talking about? Lu Yi said calmly, Zixian Demon Star. Tang Jun pointed at him and clapped his hands. See, he's thought it through. Di Baichuan felt a headache coming. Don't beat around the bush. Tell me, what are you guys thinking? Tang Jun smiled and said, it's very simple. If Zixian wants to sell it, then it must be sold at a high price. Of course, the few forces who are interested will not offer a low price. However, only by selling it to Zixian can it be sold at the highest price. To Zixian, buying back this spiritual island is not just about making a deal. They want to buy face. At this point, Tang Jun sighed. A top force losing a spiritual island in the Vientiane Sea is something that has never happened before. If Zixian doesn't buy back the spiritual island, they will be the only top force without a top-notch spiritual island from today onwards. They will become the subject of discussion at all times. The reputation of a top force is so precious that it can't be bought with money. Hence, by selling it to Zixian, we will have the absolute advantage. We can name whatever price we want and as much as we want. After hearing Tang Jun's explanation, He Baichuan was enlightened. Yes, the spiritual island had a price, but face was priceless. In order to get back the spiritual island, as long as the price offered by the three-world island was not too outrageous, Zixian Demon Star would accept it. Most importantly, in terms of wealth, which force could be compared to a top force? The benefits of selling it to others were definitely not as good as selling it back to Zixian Demon Star. This was the best target to sell Zixian to. Jiao Yan must have seen through this, which was why she instructed Aunt Yu to make a trip to the three-world island and pass on this idea to Chu Shen. Tang Jun did not expect Lu Yi to have the same idea as Jiao Yan. Therefore, even if he did not make this trip, Lu Yi would have already made a decision. Will Zixian buy it? He Baichuan asked. Tang Jun said, don't worry about that. Zixian will definitely buy it. Once the news reaches Zixian Demon Star, someone will not be able to sit still. As he spoke, he stood up and said, all right, if I knew that you had already made a decision, I would not have made this trip. You guys go ahead, I will make a move first. Tang Jun left. After a few days, The cultivators of the three-world island left one after another. The huge top-grade spiritual island had become an empty island without a master in an instant. Originally, Wuxia wanted to set up a simple defensive array here and leave some cultivators of the three-world island to guard it. However, she gave up after Lu Ye's persuasion. Yuan Du hated him to the core, so it was best for the three-world island to be more careful. They did not want to give Yuan Du any information that could be used against them. If they divided their forces to occupy Zixian, it would undoubtedly break the rule that no one force could occupy two spiritual islands on the Wanxiang Sea. At that time, Yuan Du would use this as an excuse to make a fuss. Even if he killed the cultivators of the three-world island, Lu Yi could only watch helplessly. The cultivators of the three realms retreated. Anything of value on Violet Jade Island had been taken away, with the exception of the Spirit Jade Mine. Even so, no power dared to casually occupy it. After all, if the Three Realms Island had the ability to destroy Violet Jade when it was at its peak, then they had the ability to destroy Violet Jade in its current state. No matter who came to occupy Zixian, they would definitely encounter the enmity of the Three-World Island. Once they were attacked, things would not end well. All the major forces on the 10,000 Elephant Sea were well aware of this. Therefore, although they were envious, they could only restrain themselves. The few forces that were interested in buying Zixian had been in frequent contact with Tang Jun these days. Even though Tang Jun had clearly rejected them, they still couldn't resist their enthusiasm. Recently, Lao Tang could be said to be enjoying himself every night. Although he was old, he was still strong and vigorous. He was very distressed. The fierce battle thus came to an end. The shock this battle brought to the cultivators of the Wanxiang Sea was far greater than the previous attack by the Three-World Island. This was the first top spiritual island to be conquered in the history of the Wanxiang Sea. The Three-World Island once again proved its powerful and terrifying foundation. Among them, the third island master of the Three-World Island, Lu Yi, had solidified the title of the strongest person under the sun. End of chapter. Chapter 1874. In the Three-World Island, Lu Yi and Chu Shen sat opposite each other in his bamboo house. There were a few dishes and 2 bottles of wine on the table. They were drinking and chatting happily. After retreating from Zixian yesterday, Lu Yi brought the minor constellation Hall back with him. He readjusted the power of this treasure and placed it under the Three-World Island. It had only been half a month since he placed the minor constellation Hall under Zixian Island. Hence, even though there was some impact on the Three-World Island, it was not significant. Many people did not even realize that there were many changes in the Three-World Island. Today, Lu Yi invited Chu Shen to a banquet. He did not pay much attention to it. The two of them ate and chatted casually. He did not even thank Chu Shen. He remembered some things and did not need to express it. Chu Shen did not mention it either. However, Lu Yi knew that Juyan's appearance on the all-encompassing island was not a coincidence. There were no such coincidences in this world. If there was anyone in this world who could invite Juyan, it would be Chu Shen. How long will it take for you to complete the constellation? Lu Yi threw a nut into his mouth and asked casually. Chu Shen chuckled. Soon, within 2 or 3 years. Ever since he came to the Three-World Island, Chu Shen had been living in seclusion. He cultivated in seclusion all year round. His talent was outstanding. In addition to the excellent cultivation environment on the Three-World Island, he did not lack cultivation resources. Hence, his cultivation progressed very quickly. Back then he was not like this. He was young and unruly and would run away from home at the slightest provocation. However, ever since he lost the Matchless Island, Chu Shen realized the importance of his own strength. Only then was he able to calm down and work hard. A cultivator's path of growth would always be filled with obstacles. Everyone was like that. It was these obstacles that allowed one to become more mature. Chu Shen aside, in the Three-World Island, the first batch of 9 continents constellations that came with Lu Yi had already reached the late-stage constellation realm. Their cultivation and strength had greatly improved compared to when they first came to the Myriad Phenomenon Sea. Lu Yi nodded. I am preparing to go to the carriage bell boundary. What do you think I should bring? Jiyan helped him resolve such a huge crisis. Back then, Lu Yi could not express his gratitude. Furthermore, the battle for the spiritual island was still ongoing. Hence, he immediately rushed back to Zixin Island. Now that everything was settled, it was time to pay a visit to Ling Jie and thank Jiao Yan in person. It wouldn't be nice to go empty-handed, so Lu Yi thought that he should bring some gifts. But what could possibly pique Rizhao's interest? Lu Yi thought about it and decided that he had to consult Chu Shun on this matter. After all, no one knew his mother better than him. There's no need to bring them. Big brother, just go. When the time comes, I will accompany Big brother. Chu Shun waved his hand. I need to bring them. Give me some ideas. Lu Yi insisted. Chu Shun was just being polite when he said that he didn't need to bring anything. Naturally, he couldn't really go there without bringing anything. Does Senior Jiuyan have any special preferences? Chu Shun scratched his head. I really don't know. I've never seen mother like anything. Think about it carefully. You're the son of Jiuyan after all. How could you not know what your mother likes? Chu Shun thought hard for a while, and suddenly his eyes lit up. Lu Yi immediately looked at him expectantly. Why don't you find a Dao companion for my mother, big brother? My mother has been alone all her life, she should have someone by her side. The corner of Lu Ye's mouth twitched. This was really a filial son. How could he say something like that? Moreover, where could he find a Dao companion for Jiyan? Jiyan was Rizhao. Only Rizhao was worthy of her. Soon he felt that something was wrong. He frowned and said, if Senior Jiyan has been alone all her life, where did you come from? Chu Shun laughed. I was picked up by mother. Mother and I are not biological mother and son. Lu Yi couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. He had always thought that Chu Shen and Jiuyan were biological mother and son. Who knew that they weren't? Chu Shen definitely wouldn't joke about this kind of thing. According to her, a few decades ago, when she was traveling through a certain domain, she saw me, who was still in swaddling clothes, being placed on a wooden basin. Following the river, there were jackals and wolves on both sides of the river, eyeing me covetously. If no one paid attention to me, I would either drown or be eaten by those jackals and wolves. She couldn't bear it and brought me back, taking good care of me. The origin of my name is because that domain has the word Shin, and the place where my mother found me was a small country called Chu, so my mother named me Chu Shen. Lu Yi blinked. I thought you took your father's surname. Chu Shen smiled. I don't even know who my father is. At this point, Chu Shen suddenly said, Big brother, if you insist on bringing a gift, why don't you give it to Aunt Yu? Mother probably doesn't want anything else, so she won't care about anything. However, if you give it to Aunt Yu, the effect will be the same. Lu Yi asked, then what does Aunt Yu like? Chu Shen thought for a moment and said, from what I know, Aunt Yu has a chance of breaking through to Rizhao. The soul refining pill should be good. Oh right, a few years ago, Aunt Yu seemed to be looking for treasures that can improve the quality of her spiritual source. I wonder if she found any. When he said this, Lu Yi had a plan in mind. Indeed, for a peak Yao like Aunt Yu, a top-grade soul-refining pill was undoubtedly a good gift. The top-grade soul-refining pill of the Three-World Island was now a signature item. In the vast Wanxiang Sea, countless peak Yao had their eyes on it. Although it was not difficult for the island to refine this pill, with the pill gourd, in theory, as long as they had enough raw materials, they could refine it without limit. However, they could not supply it without limit. Firstly, it would attract unwanted attention, and secondly, it would delay Shui Yuan's cultivation. Especially after the Three-World Island had gotten on the right track in recent years, Shui Yuan's main purpose of using the pill furnace to refine pills was to satisfy the cultivation needs of her own cultivators. As for selling them, that was secondary, because the Three-World Island no longer relied on selling pills to earn spirit jades. Also, with the addition of the flower tribe, they could refine normal pills, and their quality was not bad. However, if they wanted to refine top-grade pills, it would depend on luck. Therefore, there was only one way for the Three-World Island to sell top-grade soul-refining pills to the outside world, the Rainbow Chamber of Commerce's annual auction. Every time the auction was held, a large number of Yu Yao would come. Any bottle of top-grade soul refining pills would be sold at a very high price. Every year, this was the busiest time for the three-world island. The pills were sold in limited quantities to the outside world, but if Lu Yi wanted them, wouldn't it be easy? He could just take whatever he wanted. As for treasures that could increase the quality of one's spiritual source, it was a bitter matter. Lu Yi had asked the Myriad Elephant Chamber of Commerce to keep an eye out for such treasures several years ago, but there had been no news from them so far. Violet Jade Island's huge treasury did not have such treasures. Instead, he found one in Hu Guang's storage ring. It should be Hu Guang's personal item. Lu Yi had planned to refine it in a few days to increase the quality of his spiritual source. That way, his cultivation efficiency should increase slightly. Now, it seemed that there was no need to refine it. He could just give it to Aunt Yu as a gift. Although the treasure was precious, if Jiu Yan had not appeared that day, it would have been difficult to resolve the matter. If the three-world island wanted to develop on the Myriad Elephant Sea in the future, it could not do without the protection of the Che Ling realm. The next day, Lu Yi brought the gifts and set off with Chu Shen. They left the Myriad Elephant Sea and headed in the direction of the Che Ling realm. The journey was smooth and uneventful. Chu Shen had not returned to the Che Ling realm for many years, so he was rather excited along the way. When they arrived at the Che Ling realm, there was no need to say anything. Under Chu Shen's lead, they directly entered the realm. The Thousand Sunset sect on the Thousand Sunset Mountain was the largest sect in the Che Ling realm. It was also Jiuyan's sect. When Chu Shen and Lu Yi arrived, Aunt Yu was already waiting in front of a large hall. Clearly, she had sensed Chu Shen's return. "Aunt Yu!" Chu Shen shouted and stepped forward to greet her. "It's rare that you still have the heart to come back." Aunt Yu pursed her lips and smiled. "I thought you would never want to come back after leaving the Che Ling realm." Chu Shen's expression turned bitter. "Haven't I been so engrossed in cultivation that I completely forgot about myself? I was young and ignorant in the past, causing Mother and Aunt Yu to worry. Now that I've grown up, I know that home is where I belong." Aunt Yu blinked, somewhat gratified. Shen has really grown up. She looked up at Lu Yi behind Chu Shen. Lu Yi hurriedly bowed. "Aunt Yu." Since Chu Shen called him Big Brother, he naturally followed suit. Although their cultivations were about the same, Aunt Yu was indeed much older. Aunt Yu was stunned for a moment. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. In the past, Lu Yi had called her fellow Taoist. Now, she couldn't call Lu Yi by his name. They weren't familiar with this place yet. She could only nod. Island Master Lu. The #1 person under the sun. Even she didn't dare to ignore this title. It was a title that had been earned through real killing. "Aunt Yu, this is Big Brother's gift for you." Chu Shen hurriedly handed over a storage ring that he had prepared in advance. Yu smiled. "Since you're here, there's no need to bring a gift." Although she said this, she didn't refuse and reached out to take the ring. She casually checked it and her eyes lit up. "You're very thoughtful." Not to mention how rare treasures that could increase the quality of one's source of origin were, just the top-grade soul refining pill was indeed what she needed the most right now. It could be said that Lu Ye's gift was exactly what she wanted. Seeing this, Lu Yi secretly sighed in relief. Aunt Yu accepting the gift undoubtedly showed her attitude and didn't treat him as an outsider. But then again, if she really treated him as an outsider, Jiu Yan wouldn't have appeared on the island of versatility that day, and Aunt Yu wouldn't have specially made a trip to the three-world island. "Where's Mother?" Chu Shen didn't see Jiu Yan and asked. "She's inside." Yu smiled. "Mother!" Chu Shen shouted and rushed into the main hall. He looked very much like a young daughter-in-law returning to her mother's home. "Island Master Lu, please come in." Aunt Yu gestured with her hand. "Thank you for your trouble," Lu Yi said. He followed behind Aunt Yu and walked into the hall. After entering the main hall, Lu Yi immediately saw the figure of a woman sitting at the head of the table. Chu Shen was standing beside her, laughing and talking about something. Lu Yi focused his gaze on Jiu Yan's face and was immediately stunned. This was because he still couldn't see her face clearly. Just like that day outside the island of versatility, Jiu Yan's face was covered by a layer of hazy light. Looking at Chu Shen's reaction, It was obvious that he saw something different. Therefore, Lu Yi vaguely felt that Jiao Yan had used some kind of method on him to hide her face. But what? Lu Yi was puzzled. End of chapter. Chapter 1875. Lu Ye's expression immediately turned solemn. He cupped his fists and bowed. Lu Yi of the Island of the Three Realms greets Senior Jian. The hall was silent. Chu Shen stopped talking. Aunt Yu stood quietly by his side. Juyan didn't say anything. However, Lu Yi could sense that someone was staring at him. Strangely, for some reason, this gaze made him feel uncomfortable. It was as if someone who hated him was staring coldly at him. He couldn't help but frown. Juyan hated him? That didn't seem very likely. Up until now, he had only seen Juyan once outside the island of versatility a few days ago. Where did this hatred come from? It couldn't be because of Chu Shen, but it didn't seem right to say that it was just his imagination. Just as he was thinking, Juyan's voice came from the front. No need for formalities. That feeling suddenly disappeared without a trace. Have a seat, Juyan said again. Lu Yi sat quietly to the side. A female cultivator entered the room and served him tea. Lu Yi took a sip of the tea and placed it down. He then turned toward Jiao Yan and said, "Senior, I'm sorry for taking the liberty to come here. I would like to thank you for what happened outside the island of versatility a few days ago." Before Lu Yi could finish, Juyan interrupted him. What happened outside the island of versatility was just a coincidence. I was visiting an old friend and happened to pass by when I was about to leave. The old friend she was talking about was undoubtedly Mu Qing. However, when Lu Yi observed Juyan and Mu Qing's expressions that day, he didn't see any deep friendship between Juyan and Mu Qing. But since she said so, Lu Yi couldn't bring it up again. Juyan was the sunshine of the Wanxiang galaxy. Yuan Du was also the sunshine of the Wanxiang galaxy. In the end, Lu Yi was just an outsider. Juyan helping Lu Yi against Yuan Du was equivalent to sunshine of the Wanxiang galaxy fighting against his own family for an outsider. Some things were better said than done, and some things could be done but not said. Of course, Lu Yi knew this. Since Shen calls you big brother, this queen will not treat you as an outsider. Both you and Shen are young and impetuous, so it is inevitable that you will be rash and impetuous in your actions. Although it is too late to say these things now, you really should not have killed Hu Shui that day. You should know the relationship between Hu Shui and Yuan Du with your strength. Even if Hu Shui can control the battle arena, you should be able to protect yourself. You should let her know the difference in strength between you two and force her to voluntarily release the shackles of the battle arena. Senior is right. Lu Yi nodded. Actually, when I was trapped in the battle arena that day, I had no intention of killing her. It was just that some of her actions forced me to kill her. What did she do? Aunt Yu asked curiously. Lu Yi thought for a moment and felt that there was nothing he couldn't say, so he went straight to the point. That day on the battle stage, Hu Shui wasn't my match. I forced her to release the seal, but she ended up tearing her clothes apart. Under such circumstances, if she suddenly released the seal again, with Yuan Du by her side, I wouldn't be able to explain myself even if I had 10,000 mouths. So, I could only kill her, destroy her body, and destroy all evidence. So explosive? Chu Shen's eyes widened when he heard this. Thinking about it, in the middle of a life and death battle, the other party suddenly treated him with sincerity. This scene was really ridiculous. Aunt Yu frowned and couldn't help scolding, "How shameless!" Although Jiao Yan didn't say anything, it was obvious that he had the same thought. He nodded and said, "If that's the case, then killing her was indeed the best response." Then he changed the topic, "But I heard that Hu Shui is a heavenly beauty, and even Yuan Du dotes on her. Her life is in your hands, so she will definitely beg for mercy. Aren't you the least bit tempted?" Lu Yi lowered his eyes. "In a battle, under my long saber, either the enemy dies or I die. Whether she's beautiful or ugly, it's all the same to me." Jiao Yan nodded slightly and turned to look at Chu Shen. "Learn from your big brother. You still have a long way to go in the future. Sooner or later, you will encounter trouble with beauty. You must not destroy yourself because of compassion." "Yes." Chu Shen hurriedly responded. He then turned his head and winked at Lu Yi. His face was full of admiration for Lu Yi as his big brother. Jiao Yan asked again, "What are you going to do with Zi Xian?" Lu Yi replied honestly, "Although several forces have contacted us, wanting to occupy Zi Xian, this island has no intention to agree. Zi Xian has not been dealt with for the time being, and no one dares to easily occupy it. Just wait, it won't be long before someone comes to contact you." Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. "Senior, are you referring to Zi Xian Demon Star?" Jiao Yan nodded and said, "And it's probably Ri Zhao who will come to deal with this matter personally." Although Lu Yi had expected this, when he heard Jiao Yan's judgment, he still felt a little unconfident. If Ri Zhao comes, then our three-world island is not qualified to talk to him on an equal footing. If the other party uses force, Aunt Yu coldly snorted and said, "In this vast 10,000 elephant sea, even if a dragon comes, it will have to coil up. If Ri Zhao comes, you can talk to him. Unless he has the courage to break the rules, he will have to act according to the rules. There's nothing to be afraid of." Lu Yi understood. This time, he came to Che Ling Boundary not only to express his gratitude, but also because of this matter. He speculated that Zi Xian would definitely send a powerful expert to deal with the matter of Zi Xian Island. He could not count on Lionheart, which meant that he could not count on the entire Yu Yao faction. Therefore, Zi Xian would most likely send a powerful expert from Zi Xian. In front of Ri Zhao, Lu Yi had to think about how to fight for his own interests. Che Ling Boundary's attitude had undoubtedly reassured him. Aunt Yu's words clearly told him that it did not matter whether the other party was Ri Zhao or not. The three-world island could do whatever they wanted. Zi Xian hated the three-world island to the core, but if they wanted to take back Zi Xian Island, they would have to abide by the rules of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. If an outsider like Ri Zhao dared to casually make a move in the 10,000 Elephant Sea, the 10,000 Elephant Sea would not tolerate it. "I know what to do." Lu Yi nodded. "That's good." Jiao Yan was undoubtedly very satisfied with his performance. There were many smart people in this world, but being smart and cautious was undoubtedly a good character. Such people generally did not die young. Che Ling Boundary is not big, but the scenery is not bad. If you are not in a hurry to leave, you can stay in this boundary for a while and let Shen entertain you. Seeing that Jiao Yan was about to leave, Lu Yi hurriedly said, "Senior, I have one more thing to ask." "What is it?" "Is there a female cultivator called Ban Ci in this boundary?" Lu Yi asked. Jiao Yan shook her head, then asked, "Why are you looking for her?" Lu Yi didn't know why he was looking for her. Speaking of which, he didn't have much contact with Han Ci. They only went to a secret place together, but something happened there. Since then, Han Ci hadn't been heard from since. If that was all, it would be fine. The woman had left after something like that. Lu Yi did not want to be entangled with her. The key was that when he came to Che Ling Boundary last time, he saw a little girl called Ban Xia. That little girl's eyebrows and eyes were very similar to the little girl he had saved in a ruined boundary back then. Afterward, he learned from Chu Shen that Ban Xia was the child of a boundary and carried the destiny of a boundary. If he was not mistaken, Ban Xia should be the little girl he had saved back then. And Ban Xia and Ban Xia, there was a lot of room for imagination. In fact, when Ban Xia was saved back then, she was taken into a small world by Ban Xia. Now that Ban Xia was in Che Ling Boundary, Lu Yi was very puzzled. "It's nothing," Lu Yi replied in a muffled voice. Jiao Yan's interest was piqued. She asked, "Could it be that you've done something wrong to her? You've let her down again?" No. Lu Yi hurriedly denied. Under the hazy halo, Jiao Yan looked deeply at Lu Yi. "As a man, you have to be responsible. Being fickle and heartless is the most shameful thing. Take care of yourself." With that, he stood up and left. Lu Yi also stood up and bowed. He was speechless. Speaking of which, there was no such thing as being irresponsible between him and Han Ci, and there was no such thing as being heartless. The main thing was that he had not seen Han Ci since that day. If he had the chance to see her, Lu Yi wanted to ask her what she meant. Since he had already achieved his goal, Lu Yi naturally would not stay in Che Ling Boundary for long. Chu Xin still had to stay here for a few days before returning to Three World Island. The two brothers bade farewell. Lu Yi did not let him send him off and left on his own. From Ling boundary to Three World Island and into the Wanxiang Sea, he happened to pass by Zixian. Since Lu Yi had nothing to do, he took the time to visit Zixian. He found that the huge Zixian was now overcrowded. Countless homeless cultivators gathered here in groups of 2s and 3s. To most cultivators, other than the Wanxiang Island, they would never be able to enter the other top spiritual islands. Now that Zixian was ownerless, they were naturally happy to come and watch the fun. Especially the Spirit Jade Mine, it was the most attractive. This was a rare opportunity to broaden one's horizons. As for cultivating here, that was absolutely impossible. Setting aside the fact that there were too many cultivators gathered here, without the protection of the Grand Array, the energy escaping from the myriad phenomenon sea would not be able to stay on Violet Jade Island. Thus, even if he were to cultivate here, it would be useless. Everyone came here to watch the fun. As for setting up the array, this huge Zixian was the spoils of war of Three World Island. Whoever dared to do so would be provoking Three World Island. They were afraid that once they set up the array, they would be targeted and attacked by Three World Island. Therefore, this resulted in such a huge top-grade spiritual island being overcrowded with people, yet it was in a strange state of being ownerless. This had never happened before in the entire history of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Lu Yi did not stay for too long. He only checked for a while before leaving. After returning to Three World Island, he had not even warmed his seat when Luan Xiaoa came to find him. Yan Miao came with her. "Senior sisters, your red Luan stars are moving and your faces are glowing. Are you expecting something?" Lu Yi teased. Luan Xiaoa could not help but glare at him. "Don't talk nonsense." She changed the topic. "I want to step down from my position as island master." Yan Miao said, "Me too." End of chapter. Chapter 1876. Luan Xiaoa was about to step down from her position as the first island master, but she came to inform Lu Yi, the third island master. This would never happen on any other spiritual island. "Senior martial sisters, what happened?" Lu Ye's expression turned serious. To be honest, ever since the Three Realms cultivators came to the Wanxiang Sea, Luan Xiaoa had always been in charge. She had done a good job. Lu Yi was a little confused by her sudden appearance today. Yan Miao was the same. Luan Xiaoa looked at him and said, "I'm going into seclusion for a while. I'm not sure how long it will take." The same goes for the first elder. Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. Realization dawned on him, and he looked delighted. "Congratulations, senior sisters." Both Luan Xiaoa and Yan Miao were at the peak of the Yuyao realm. If they were going into seclusion, there was only one thing they could do: break through the Yuyao realm and ascend to sunshine. This was undoubtedly great news for the Three Realms Island. After so many years of nourishment from supreme-grade spirit-refining pills, were they finally going to bear fruit? If Luan Xiaoa could really take that step, then she would truly become the first sunshine cultivator in the Jade Conch galaxy. If Yan Miao ascended to sunshine, the significance would be equally great. For countless years, only the royal bloodline of the Merfolk tribe had a chance of ascending to sunshine. This was because of the bloodline curse. If Yan Miao succeeded, then the Merfolk tribe would also have their own sunshine. Their living conditions under the sea would be much better. However, it was not so easy to ascend from Yuyao to sunshine. There were countless galaxies in the universe. Which one did not have their own Yuyao? Although the number of Yuyao in the cultivation world was not as large as the number of constellations, there were still many of them. However, there were not many sunshine cultivators. "Senior sisters, have you suddenly sensed an opportunity?" Lu Yi asked. Luan Xiaoa shook her head. "Actually, the first elder and I sensed an opportunity 2 years ago. However, the Three Realms Island was not completely stable yet. We were worried. Things are different now. The purple jade has been broken. I'm sure no one will dare to cause trouble for the island. We can go into seclusion without worry." "I see." Lu Yi understood. "When do you plan to begin?" "As soon as possible." Luan Xiaoa replied, 5 Yuao. After Grand Elder and I leave, the Merfolk clan will transfer 2nd Elder Yushi and 4th Elder Cheng over to fill the vacancies. In the future, I'll have to trouble you to take care of 3 World Island. There were a few newly ascended Yu Yao on the island, but because they had just ascended, their cultivation was still insufficient, making it difficult for them to take on important tasks. Thus, they still had to be transferred from the mermaid tribe. After all, if there really was a battle, the mermaid tribe wouldn't care whether you were a newly ascended Yu Yao or not. When it was time to kill, they wouldn't show any mercy. Sure. Lu Yi nodded repeatedly. He Baichuan's face appeared in his mind. Later on, he could hand over all matters of the 3 World Island to He Baichuan. With old Tang assisting from the side, it wouldn't be too bad. After discussing some details with Luan Xiaoa and Yen Miao, the 2 women left. They had to wait a few days for Yushi and Cheng Xian to come over from the mermaid tribe's territory. Then, they would make a trip to the island of versatility to change the information of the island's guardian, Yu Yao. Only then could Yushi and Cheng Xian be considered the guardians of the 3-realm island Yu Yao. As for where Luan Xiaoa and Yen Miao would go into seclusion, what place in the world had better conditions than a spirit jade mine? Thus, the 2 women had to go to the mermaid tribe's territory. There was another advantage to doing this. Once they successfully ascended to the Sunshine Realm, no one would be alerted. If they were allowed to stay in seclusion on the 3-World Island, they wouldn't be able to hide the fact that they ascended to the Sunshine Realm. At that time, they wouldn't be able to stay on the island of versatility for long. Even if they didn't want to leave, they would have to leave. There was a precedent for this. Since ancient times, there had always been a few Yu Yao who ascended to the Sunshine Realm on the island of versatility. However, without exception, they could only stay for a short while before leaving. In the blink of an eye, the island's Yu Yao had 2 new guardians. The island master's ranking had also been changed. Lu Yi had become the first island master of the 3-World Island. This was indisputable. Even though the other Yu Yao were older than him in both cultivation and age, no one had any objections to him being the first island master. The 3-World Island was the most famous, and the strongest person on the island was the first island master. This was a deterrent to outsiders. When others mentioned the 3-World Island, they would think of the number 1 person under the Sunshine Realm. He Baichuan became the 2nd island master, followed by Ma Shangxi, Yu Shi, and Cheng Xin. Perhaps because of the battle with Zi Xian, the 3-World Island had become more and more lively recently. The flow of customers had more than doubled. This made many shopkeepers rejoice that they had chosen to set up shop here in the first place. However, they were also a little worried because they didn't know if the rent would increase in the future. Luan Xiaoa and Yen Miao went to the Merfolk tribe's territory to cultivate in seclusion. Lu Yi also began his own seclusion. Speaking of which, he had long since planned to break through to the late-stage Yu Yao. However, he had always been delayed by various things. Now that he had defeated Zi Xian, no one would come looking for trouble, right? He left his talent tree clone on the island, while his main body dove into the sea. He activated the talent tree's power and opened his mind to refine the seawater. Time passed. 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, on the bustling island of the 3-World, a young man with a dignified appearance strode through the spacious streets, and he sized up the surroundings with great interest. Soon, the young man arrived at a place. This was the boundary between the 3-World Island's trade area and the island's cultivators' residential area. If he continued forward, he would arrive at the island's cultivators' residential area. Under normal circumstances, cultivators who came to the 3-World Island to do business wouldn't come here. There were also cultivators from the 3-World Island guarding this place. Seeing that the young man didn't change his direction and continued walking, a cultivator from the 3-World Island immediately stepped forward and blocked his path. He raised his hand and gestured, "Halt! The area ahead is not open to outsiders. If you wish to buy or sell something, you may return." The young man clasped his hands behind his back and smiled calmly. "I'm not here to buy anything. I'm here to see your first island master." The cultivator blocking the way asked, "May I ask who you are? Why do you wish to see the first island master?" There are indeed some matters I wish to discuss with him. The young man didn't answer directly. Instead, he took out a jade tablet and flicked it with a finger. Please bring this to your first island master. He will naturally know. The cultivator took the jade tablet and glanced at it. He couldn't see anything special about it. He couldn't help but look at the young man in front of him. Only now did he realize to his surprise that he couldn't see through the young man's cultivation. This undoubtedly meant that the young man was most likely Yu Yao. Moreover, although the young man looked young, his bearing was extremely steady. The first impression he had was that he had a powerful background. Now that the Three World Islands' reputation had spread, many people naturally came to pay them a visit. However, most of the cultivators who came were looking for Tang Jun. By now, everyone knew that Tang Jun was the true representative of the Three World Island. Thus, if they truly wanted to cooperate with the Three World Island, he was the best choice. In the past, there had been people who had come to see Lu Yi, but after being turned down a few times, no one had come to see him again. Please wait a moment, the cultivator from the Three World Island said, then immediately turned and left. Not long after, within Lu Ye's bamboo tower, the innate skill tree clone carefully examined the jade tablet. He raised an eyebrow. A young man? The cultivator who came nodded. He's very young. Of course, in the cultivation world, a youthful appearance didn't mean that one was truly young. It was possible that one was an old monster. The one who came this time was undoubtedly such an old monster. Moreover, he was a true old monster. That was because there was an extremely faint but extremely pure demonic aura lingering on the jade tablet. Lu Yi had a rough idea of the young man's background. Invite him in, Lu Yi ordered. Yes. After a while, the innate skill tree clone was waiting in front of the bamboo tower. When he saw the young man who came in with the disciple, his expression couldn't help but turn solemn. Ever since he returned from Che Ling realm that day, he had been waiting for this day to come. He had also imagined what kind of method Rizhao of Zixian would use if he really wanted to discuss the matter of Zixian Island with him. It was very likely that he would ask someone else to pass on the message and then ask him to meet somewhere. However, Lu Yi had never expected that the young man would come over himself. For someone like Rizhao, this was undoubtedly a bit condescending. What was even more unexpected to Lu Yi was that the young man came over silently, without leaving any trace. Moreover, he even used the method of asking for an audience. It wasn't that Rizhao couldn't come to the Three World Island. With Rizhao's status, if he came to the island in a domineering manner, it would be normal for him to show off his supreme prestige as a deterrent. After all, everyone had a blood feud. There was no need to be so polite. This demon was not easy to deal with. This was Lu Ye's first impression of the young man when he saw him. Zixian's huge change didn't seem to affect him at all. Along the way, he didn't show any resentment or other emotions on his face. Instead, he looked around with interest. First Island Master. The Three World Island cultivator who led the way came forward and cupped his fists. Lu Yi nodded and waved his hand, dismissing him. He looked straight at the young man who followed him. The young man also happened to look over. When their eyes met, the young man's clear eyes were like a deep pool. They were so deep that one couldn't see the bottom. What made Lu Yi slightly puzzled was that he seemed to have seen this guy somewhere before. However, he couldn't remember at the moment. Three World Island, Lu Yi. Lu Yi bowed first. Hey Yun. The young man nodded slightly and introduced himself. Lu Yi could not suppress the doubts in his heart and asked bluntly, May I ask, Demon Venerable, have we met somewhere before? On the Zixian demon planet, Yu Yao was the king, while Rizhao was the supreme. Demons like Lionheart and Huguang were all demon kings. He Yun was a demon venerable. This wasn't a division of strength, but a division of the demon race's status system. He Yun smiled and said, Reincarnation Tree, Alpha Origin Stage. Lu Yi was enlightened. He finally remembered where he had seen He Yun before. When Yang Qing had brought him to the Reincarnation Tree to participate in the Battle of the Divine Sea, he had seen many experts from various domains in the hall. He Yun was from the Zixian Demon Star, and at that time he had also brought along a rising star called Zixian. End of chapter. Chapter 1877. I've always felt that the name Lu Yi sounded familiar, but now I know that you are the Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens. He Yun smiled slightly, his gaze somewhat scrutinizing. Your cultivation speed is really fast. You were only at the Divine Sea realm back then, but now you're already at the intermediate Moon Jade stage. Even Lionheart is no match for you. I was just lucky, Lu Yi said as he gestured. Demon Venerable, please. He Yun nodded and walked up the bamboo building with his hands still behind his back. After a short while, the host and guest took their seats. He Yun was still looking around, as if curious about everything. However, Lu Ye's bamboo building was extremely simple and crude. Besides a few pieces of furniture, there was nothing else, so He Yun couldn't see anything special about it. The visitor was a guest, and the other party was Ri Guang, who had come by asking for an audience. Of course, Lu Yi couldn't be rude. He took out a tea set from his storage ring and slowly began to brew tea. Amidst the fragrance of the tea, He Yun suddenly said, Actually, this venerable has always been very curious about one thing. Can Island Master Lu enlighten me? What is Demon Venerable talking about? Back then, during the battle of the Divine Sea realm in the Alpha Origin stage, how did you kill all the vampires? Do you have some kind of method that can target vampires and accurately find them? Something like that? Lu Yi nodded. Speaking of which, he had learned the blood cry technique from a certain vampire. Otherwise, how could he have found the other vampires? To be able to find them and kill them all, this kind of strength is rare in the Divine Sea realm. Back then, in the Alpha Origin stage, the vampires could easily gather together by relying on their special bloodline. In other words, at that time, you had the strength to be invincible among your peers. Now, you can still do this even at the Moon Jade stage. The talent of the human race is really terrifying and enviable. I dare not call myself invincible. Demon Venerable is too kind. Lu Yi carefully replied. After all, the other party was Ri Guang. No matter how approachable and harmless he appeared, Lu Yi still had to be on guard. Although he was here with his talent tree avatar, and even if something happened, it wouldn't affect his main body, it was better to be careful. There is one more thing that this venerable doesn't understand. He Yun did not seek Lu Ye's opinion this time and asked directly, What means did you use to break Purple Jade Island's defensive array? It had already been more than 2 months since the Three-World Island attacked and occupied Zixian. He Yun rushed over after receiving the news. Naturally, he had already learned the whole story from Lionheart. Disregarding the powerful individual strength that Lu Yi had displayed from the beginning to the end, what He Yun couldn't understand the most was why Zixian's defensive array had a problem at that critical juncture, giving Lu Yi an opportunity to take advantage of it. Was it a coincidence? That was too much of a coincidence. But if it wasn't a coincidence, there seemed to be no way to explain it. If Zixian's defensive array didn't have any problems, even if the Three-World Island had 100 years, they wouldn't be able to break it. The sudden collapse of the protective formation was the root cause of Zixian's destruction. All the cultivators on the 10,000 Forms Sea who witnessed the battle felt that it was a coincidence, but He Yun felt that something was amiss. There's something wrong with Zixian's defensive formation. I didn't break it. I just happened to be there. Of course, Lu Yi wouldn't admit to the details. If the secret of the minor constellation hall was exposed, he would no longer have a foothold in the 10,000 Forms Sea. If he could use the minor constellation hall to destroy Zixian today, then could he destroy the 10,000 Forms Island in the future? The defenses of the other top-grade spiritual islands were no longer as impregnable. Have some tea, Demon Venerable. Lu Yi raised his hand and poured a cup of tea for He Yun. He Yun nodded. He was about to say something when Lu Yi interrupted him. If Demon Venerable wants to take back Zixian Island, the Three-World Island has no objections. However, we have 2 conditions. Even if the other party was Rizhao, Lu Yi couldn't let him have the initiative of the conversation. The issue of Zixian's ownership was his trump card. He Yun had no choice but to respond to this topic, unless he didn't want Zixian Island anymore. He Yun obviously realized how difficult it was to deal with Lu Yi. The relaxed attitude that he had deliberately created was instantly shattered with this sentence. He raised his teacup and took a sip. He smiled and said, "Speak?" Lu Yi looked at him and said seriously, "The first condition is that the three-world island wants Zixian to compensate us with 10 billion spirit jades or resources of the same value." He Yun opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, Lu Yi interrupted him. "Let me first explain to Demon Venerable why we want this compensation. That day, I received an invitation from Zixian and went to attend the banquet. During the banquet, your island's demonic cultivators wanted to perform a blood sacrifice. The sacrifice was a newly promoted Yu Yao from the three-world island. In order to save his life, I negotiated with Hu Guang to redeem him with 1 billion spirit jades. Hu Guang agreed. He promised that as long as I paid him 1 billion spirit jades, he could take the island's cultivators and leave safely. Demon Venerable can find someone to verify this. Many people saw it with their own eyes that day. After that, I immediately ordered people to gather 1 billion spirit jades of resources and sent them to Zixian Island. Hu Guang led his people to receive them, but in the blink of an eye, he reneged on his debt and embezzled those treasures. He Yun pursed his lips. When he was about to speak, Lu Yi said, "Although 10 billion is a lot, I believe Zixian can take it out. Demon Venerable, you don't have to bargain. My conditions are the bottom line of the three-world island. This is only asking Zixian to pay back 10 times. If Demon Venerable wants to bargain, I can totally ask for 20 billion, 30 billion, or even more." He Yun frowned. For the first time since he met Lu Yi, he didn't look as calm as before. 10 billion spirit jades, or resources of the same value, was not a small sum, even for Zixian. He looked up at Lu Yi and said, "But as far as I know, after you attacked Zixian, you should have taken back the spirit jades. Not only that, there should be even more loot in the treasury." Lu Yi said indifferently, "Demon Venerable, you also said that those were loot. Our three-world island sent troops and cultivators to fight. Don't we need to consume resources? If Demon Venerable confuses the loot with the ransom paid by our island, then it's completely unreasonable." He said in a serious tone, "Only if you agree to the first condition can we continue to talk." He Yun stared at Lu Yi for a long time before saying, "You're a little rude, aren't you? This Venerable is Ri Zhao after all." In other words, Lu Yi didn't have the humble attitude that Yu Yao should have when facing Ri Zhao. Lu Yi said matter-of-factly, "Demon Venerable, we're negotiating, not chatting. I believe that Demon Venerable has already mentally prepared himself before coming here." He Yun snorted. He was mentally prepared, but he didn't expect Lu Yi to be so greedy. After a moment of silence, He Yun said, "I agree to the first condition. Tell me about the second one." They lost the Battle of the Spiritual Islands and lost Zixian. Now that they wanted to take back Zixian, the three-world island's attitude was the key. As long as the three-world island insisted, he had to agree to this condition. Lu Ye's eyes flashed with killing intent. "I want Lionheart's life." Lionheart escaped to the island of versatility. This was a thorn in his heart. He had to remove it no matter what. The reason why he wanted to sell Zixian back then was not only because Zixian could offer a very high price. If it was purely for the spirit jades, there was no need for him to sell it back to Zixian. Even if other forces offered a lower price, Lu Yi could still accept it. The main reason was to kill Lionheart. Lionheart escaped to the island of versatility. As long as he didn't come out, Lu Yi would never have the chance to kill him. Of course, Lionheart couldn't hide in the island of versatility forever. However, Lu Yi couldn't keep an eye on him forever. Therefore, he had to think of other ways to kill Lionheart. He Yun said in a low voice, "Kid, don't be rude." Lu Yi said calmly, "Let me explain to the Demon Lord why I want Lionheart's life." He Yun's head hurt when he heard this. It sounded so familiar. That day, Hu Guang refused to admit that he had taken the ransom from Three-World Island. That Lionheart swallowed the newly promoted Yu Yao guard alive. A life for a life, a debt of blood for a blood debt, right? He Yun said, "Your Three-World Island lost Wei Pe, but Zixian's casualties are far greater than yours. How do you explain this? If it weren't for Lionheart swallowing Wei Pe, there wouldn't have been such a dispute. The Purple Jade's death was the result of war. It was completely self-inflicted. How can it be compared to the death of Wei Pe? Lu Yi argued. Alright. He Yun became serious. Let's not talk about the losses from the war. As far as I know, Zi Xian captured Wei Pe because he killed Zi Xian's Yao cultivator first. Lu Yi couldn't help but sneer. Demon Lord, you believe this? Zi Xian is so famous. Although Wei Pe hasn't been in the Wanxiang Sea for long, he at least knows who he can offend and who he can't. Let's not talk about whether he would pass by Zi Xian. Even if he did, he would stay far away. How could he kill Zi Xian's Yao cultivator near Zi Xian? Lionheart isn't dead yet. Demon Lord, you can ask him what's going on. Of course, if Demon Lord pretends to be confused, then we don't have to talk anymore. I think Demon Lord knows better than anyone why my junior brother Wei Pe was captured. Zi Xian Island became someone's lackey and schemed against the Three-World Island. Who can they blame for their current situation? It's a pity that my junior brother Wei Pe just became a Yu Yao cultivator with a bright future, but he became Zi Xian's chess piece. What crime did Wei Pe commit? How dare you? He Yun couldn't help but be called a lackey by Lu Yi. Do you really think that I won't do anything to you just because your clone is here? Lu Yi blinked and said, I do have a clone, but since I'm meeting Demon Lord, I won't be so careless. If Demon Lord wants to make a move, just do it. It was possible for He Yun to see through the details of the precious blood avatar, but with the talent tree avatar here, Lu Yi was sure that even He Yun could not see through it. That sentence just now was just a test of He Yun's annoyance. He couldn't wait for He Yun to make a move. If that happened, he would lose a talent tree clone. He just needed to take back the roots of the talent tree and be a hero again. However, once He Yun made a move here, Zi Xian Demon Star would no longer have a place to stand in the vast Wanxiang Sea. I have something to do today. Sorry, I have to go out. End of chapter. Chapter 1878. Inside the loft, He Yun stared deeply at him. No one knew what he was thinking, but in the end, he didn't make a move. He pointed at Lu Yi and said, You should be glad that it was me who came this time. If it was my senior brothers who came, based on what you said just now, I'm afraid they would already be dead. Lu Yi said, Then you should be glad that you're here. He Yun was not angry at all. In fact, when the incident at Purple Jade Island was reported back to the Purple Jade demonic planet, many demon venerables were furious. It was He Yun who persuaded them to calm down and come personally to deal with the matter. He knew the temper of those demon venerables. They were easily triggered. Asking them to come over would only make the situation worse. Therefore, Lu Yi was right when he said that he should be glad. Of course, he knew the consequences if Purple Jade Rizhao killed Lu Yi here. Lu Yi took a sip of tea and said casually, Demon Venerable, you don't have to feel like you're at a disadvantage. This is a good deal. He Yun sneered, How is it a good deal? 10 billion spirit jades was one thing, Zi Xian could afford it. However, the key was Lionheart's life. He really couldn't agree to this request. As Zi Xian Rizhao, if he agreed to this condition, how would he explain it to the Zi Xian Demon Star when he returned? The Lionheart clan was still very powerful on the Purple Jade demonic planet. Lu Yi said, a top-grade spirit island and a spirit jade mine with an annual production of 30 million spirit jades. If you think this is not a good deal, then how much is your realm's face worth? Demon Venerable, you should know that your realm has not only lost Purple Jade Island, but also the face of a top-grade domain. 10 billion spirit jades and Yue Yao's life in exchange for this? Is it not worth it? He Yun was left speechless. Indeed, compared to taking back the Zishuan Island, the Zishuan demonic star's reputation was what he needed to consider the most. If he could take back the Zishuan Island, he would be able to pick up the reputation that he had lost. However, if he could not take back the Zishuan Island, the Zishuan demonic star would become the first top force in the Vientiane Sea to lose their spiritual island. Who could resist this? He Yun was tired. Although he knew that they were at an absolute disadvantage in this negotiation, he did not expect Lu Yi to be so difficult to deal with. I want Lionheart's life to give the cultivators of this island an explanation. I know why Demon Venerable is unwilling to agree. It's just a matter of face. It's Purple Jade Demonic Planet. If the Purple Jade Demonic Planet, it would be a blow to its reputation. The world would think that Jade was afraid of Three World Island and was giving up Lionheart. This was the Purple Jade Demonic Planet's demonic planet. Demonic planet could not accept this. Since you already know, then you should understand that it's impossible for me to agree to the second condition. He Yun's face darkened. Lu Yi said indifferently, Lionheart sacrificed his monster core in a desperate fight. Although he was lucky enough to survive, his monster core must have been damaged. As far as I know, he has no hope of sunlight to begin with and can only be tempered in the Jade realm. Now that his monster core has been damaged, his future will be even bleaker. There are many Jade realms in your esteemed realm, so why can't you give up on Lionheart? He Yun said, then why did Three World Island start a war for Weipa? Lu Yi blinked and did not want to be entangled with him on this issue. She changed the topic and said, the problem of your honorable realm's reputation can actually be solved. It just depends on whether the Demon Lord is willing or not. What I want is Lionheart's life, not to kill him in public. Pausing for a moment, Lu Yi continued. Taking a step back, Lionheart, as the first island master of Zixien, actually lost the foundation that your realm's ancestors worked hard for over 10,000 years. I believe Zixien must be very angry about this, right? Won't they hold you accountable? Lionheart's mistake cannot be forgiven even if he dies. He Yun stared into Lu Ye's eyes. After a long while, he pointed at him. That mouth of yours. I'm afraid it's poisonous. Lu Yi did not respond. He Yun pondered for a while. Then he raised his hand and sent a musical note to Lu Yi. Lu Yi caught it and understood He Yun's intention. He handed his own musical note to He Yun. The two sides exchanged musical notes. He Yun stood up without a word. Lu Yi respectfully sent him off. A moment later, He Yun soared into the sky and disappeared. Lu Yi stood in place and watched. Although He Yun did not give a definite answer in the end, since he was willing to exchange musical note imprints, it was a good start. Perhaps He Yun was hesitating. Perhaps he had already made a decision. However, Lu Yi could not guess what it was. Three World Island had already made two conditions. If Purple Jade still wanted to take back Purple Jade Island, they had to agree to those two conditions. Otherwise, as time passed, it was hard to say whether Lu Yi would find another home for Purple Jade. If that happened, Purple Jade would be the one suffering. Therefore, Three World Island was not in a hurry to come to a conclusion. The one who should be anxious was Purple Jade. The talent tree clone continued to guard the island, while the main body cultivated greedily under the Vientiane Sea. He Baichuan also knew that Lu Yi had always been a hands-off boss. Therefore, after Luan Xiao went into seclusion, he took over all of Three World Island's affairs. With Tang Jun's assistance, there was no major trouble on the island. Occasionally, there would be some small problems, but they would be quickly resolved. After their victory over Purple Jade, the many star mansions of Three World Island spent their days cultivating diligently. Even the newly promoted Yu Yao were no exception. Although the promotion of Yu Yao was not the beginning, it was not the end either. Who did not wish to improve their cultivation? 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, the musical note on the talent tree clone guarding the island suddenly vibrated. The clone hurriedly checked. The message from the musical note was very simple. There was only one location. When he checked the source of the message, he immediately understood. In the next moment, Lu Ye's main body, who had been under the sea for 4 months, slowly opened his eyes. His figure swept up and silently flew out of the sea, heading in a certain direction. A few days later, a star boat leisurely streaked across the starry sky. This star boat was completely sealed. In other words, no one could see what was inside from the outside. This kind of star boat was not rare in the starry sky, so it did not attract much attention. There were 2 figures in the star boat. One of them was driving the star boat, while the other was sitting cross-legged at the back. In comparison, the figure sitting cross-legged at the back was extremely tall and burly. However, his aura seemed to be somewhat unstable and his broad face was pale. Suddenly, the burly figure opened his eyes. He was bewildered. Fellow Taoist, is there any commotion outside? When the cultivator driving the star boat heard this, he said, someone was fighting nearby just now. There's no need to panic. Fights were common in the myriad phenomenon galaxy. When the burly figure heard this, he was slightly relieved. In the past, there was no one in the vast myriad phenomenon sea that he was afraid of. He was of noble birth, and his strength was strong enough. As long as the sun did not shine, no one could be his opponent. However, the battle a few months ago had shattered his confidence. It was only then that he realized there was someone stronger than him in the Yu-Yao realm. Most importantly, that person was not at the late stage of the Yu-Yao realm. He was only at the middle stage of the Yu-Yao realm. When he fled to the Myriad Phenomenon Island, if Hu Shui had not jumped out at the critical moment and trapped that person with the help of the battle arena, he would have died that day. Although he was in a sorry state and was unwilling to accept his fate, he did not want to seek revenge on that person. He only wanted to leave the Myriad Phenomenon Sea and go as far as he could. Since He Yun had arranged for him to leave, he naturally obeyed. Moreover, the person escorting him was Yuan Cheng. It could be said that the arrangement was very appropriate. He had experienced the powerful killing intent of Lu Yi from the Three-World Island. As long as he stayed here, he would not be able to rest in peace. However, as long as he could return to the demonic Zishuan star alive, he would have nothing to fear. Fellow Taoist, let's go faster. Thinking of this, he urged. All right. Yuan Cheng, who was steering the star boat at the front, responded. Although he appeared calm on the surface, his heart was filled with fear because he knew what was going to happen next. Before they set off, Yuan Du had secretly told him that he did not want to get involved in this kind of matter. However, looking at the entire Myriad Phenomenon Island, there was no one else other than him who was suitable to escort Lionheart away. Moreover, since Yuan Du had spoken, he had no right to refuse. The star boat gradually sailed to a remote area. Even cultivators from various galaxies were rarely willing to come to this place because the space here was not stable enough. There seemed to be signs of a new insect passage being born. No one knew when this insect passage would be born, but once it was born, if they were in the vicinity, they might be sucked into it. Therefore, everyone usually stayed as far away from this area as possible. In the Myriad Phenomenon Galaxy, there were several such remote areas, all of which were inaccessible. At this point, Yuan Cheng could not help but feel his heart in his throat. He became extremely nervous. In this state, no matter how well he hid, he was still detected by Lionheart behind him. At first, Lionheart did not realize it, but gradually he realized that something was wrong. Yuan Cheng was clearly on guard against something. After pondering for a moment, he hastily took out a star map to check. When he saw his current location, his expression changed. This was because this location was not on the path back to the demonic planet. To return to the demonic planet from the Myriad Phenomenon Sea, one had to pass through an insect passage. Only by crossing another galaxy could one enter the galaxy where the demonic planet was located. However, the starboat was currently very far away from the correct path. He subconsciously thought that Yuan Cheng was harboring evil intentions and wanted to harm him. However, on second thought, he felt that something was wrong. Yuan Cheng was only at the early Yu-Yao stage. Even if he was not in peak condition and his strength was greatly reduced, Yuan Cheng alone would not be a match for him. He could not help but recall the Black Cloud Demon Venerable's earnest advice before they set off from the Myriad Phenomenon Island. Lionheart's panicked expression gradually calmed down. He had a rough idea of what had happened. End of chapter. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.